going to take this opportunity to share my testimony. I've tried and failed countless times to share my testimony, and I think the reason is because it gets so wordy. My testimony of being saved has been happening in stages over the course of my life. I grew up in church. I was the kid who didn't want to go for majority of my upbringing. I would sit there and I would watch the minutes on the clock as the sermon was going. And then I grew up and I dreamed of being a mom to the point where I would have had a baby in high school if I was able to. I was just baby crazy. And it wasn't a surprise then when at the age of 22 that I did get pregnant and I wasn't married. And I was thrilled because I was finally going to have a baby. But I also was terrified that it actually happened. And I remember I went through some resources. Obviously, I was ready emotionally. I had been around babies my whole life because my mom did home daycare. So I knew what I was doing, but I had no idea what I was doing at the same time because it's just different when you're taking care of other people's kids. And then when you're preparing for your own. So, the baby's dad and I stayed together. We actually were talking about getting engaged before I found out that I was pregnant. We had visited a couple jewelers and, we're just looking at some rings. And I remember we went to an antique market when I was pregnant and I found this cute little antique wedding band set and we bought it. And it was kind of like a commitment ring. It didn't hold any promise to it, but I think basically at the time I wanted something on my finger to show that I was in a committed relationship, I guess. I'm not quite sure what my mind was thinking with that, but I do remember it. And then toward the end of my pregnancy, we had a huge celebration. I was the first one of our group of a lot of friends. My husband, well, he's my husband now. That's a spoiler alert. My husband and I were both pretty social, and we just had a lot of people that wanted to celebrate the baby coming. And so we got together at my best friend's house, her parents' house. They hosted what we called a baby celebration. And there were about 80 people there, and it was amazing. And I was pretty pregnant. I think I was due at the beginning of July, and we had this baby celebration in the middle of May. So I was about roughly 7 to 8 months pregnant. And he took it upon himself to surprise me with an engagement ring. He proposed to me. And we could have rushed to be married before the baby was born, but I didn't want that. I didn't want to rush into marriage just because we were having a baby, even though I knew that we were going to end up staying together. And so, long story short, we ended up getting married when our daughter was 15 months. We had bought a house when she was about 4 months. We were, doing all the things that you do, when you're preparing to mesh your lives and bring a child into the world and as having a baby. And my husband, well, fiance at the time, poured himself into work. He is an electrician, and then he was also he would go to work during the day and then he would go to the house at night, and we were just fully renovating this house. And so we did still live at my parents' house at the time. So my daughter and I spent a lot of time together, and that was just kind of what our life was. And Then she entered kindergarten. Well, first she went to preschool at the church where I was raised. They didn't have older programs, so we went to a different school that was also a private school for her kindergarten experience. And I remember around that time my heart was starting to change a little bit. I wasn't enjoying as much the radio stations that I was listening to, and I remember driving one day and looking over to the side, and I saw a bumper sticker that was for K-Love. And it was very simple. It was K-Love, the radio station number, and then underneath it was positive, period, encouraging, period. And I thought, well, that's got to be a great radio station. And so I turned it on, and I didn't have to cringe anymore when I was listening to it, worrying about what my daughter in the back seat was going to hear. And so I made that switch very easily. I just started listening to it. I enjoyed it. And that was also right about the time that I found out that they record your church attendance on the report cards at school when she was in kindergarten. And I thought, I don't want to be the parent that's not taking my kid to church. So I got back into the routine of going. We were not going regularly at the time, but that was the nudge that I needed to get back into church. And I did start attending the church where I grew up, and it was always me and my mom and my daughter going to church every Sunday, and then we would do lunch afterwards. And like I said, my husband was working full-time and then renovating the house so we could move in. That renovation took about 15 months. And then on top of that, we were in the routine then of doing this, and so my husband wasn't attending with us. And then the school closed. Preschool stayed open. Kindergarten through 8th grade closed down, and we were left trying to find a new school. And I remember visiting a school that was very lively, and we were attached right away, but of course the tuition was going to be higher, and I knew that if we became members at the church that our tuition would be a little bit cheaper. So I did kind of use that to sell the idea to my husband. We were married by then. And I had told him, though, I said, I don't want to become members of a church if you're not going to join me in church, because that's just how it should be. I want to do this as a family. And so he was actually very receptive. He also really appreciated the community, and the worship music was just rich. And I remember, though, prior to that, sitting through sermons that I used to watch my clock when they were feeling so long when I was a kid. And I remember thinking, gosh, these sermons are just, they're speaking to me. I feel like it was just me and the pastor in the room. I felt like they were directly just written for my education and my education only. It was really interesting. And at that point, I was kind of figuring things out, and we were already married, but I had a lot of conflict in my marriage in the early years, and it went on for a really long time because both of us are imperfect people. And then you add the layer of not doing things the right way. We entered into a marriage with a child, and though she was always wanted and always loved, and honestly at that point the best thing that ever happened to me, our relationship was very, very, very strained. And I was leading in a lot of things because I felt like I had to keep the ball rolling with our life as he was working so hard to provide for us. And then, we had gotten into the habit of kind of living separate lives with all of the hours that he had put in. And then you add the layer of kidney failure. My husband had had a kidney transplant when he was younger, about 13 years old, and that kidney transplant lasted until our daughter was about 2.5. So when we entered the stage of dialysis, I was not prepared, and I knew nothing about it, and I learned really quickly that it changes my husband. Some of it is just part of what happens to your body, but I think some of it was provoked just by my sheer ignorance and lack of love in many regards. So that was kind of our background, and I started getting pretty bold about sharing my faith, but I didn't really have a leg to stand on, because at that point I wasn't even reading my Bible regularly. I had kind of, bought into the, God is loving and forgiving, and he won't, I had never repented of the things that I had done. And it was interesting because I was living, again, not in the best way. I wasn't glorifying God, but I was speaking very highly of him, and just that's how I lived for a really long time. And then we fast forward many years. We've added 2 children to our lives by this point, and a kidney transplant had happened, and that lasted for 5 years, and then we were back on the journey of dealing with dialysis again, and things were just kind of a whirlwind, and our relationship wasn't that strong, and I was still just kind of taking the reins with raising our kids, and dragging him to church, dragging my husband to church, probably on times when he didn't want to be there. And that was just our life, and I was blind and content and discontent all in the same. And then I had a huge life change when my daughter was in 8th grade. That's also the time where our youngest was 5 months old, and again, my husband was on dialysis. This was his 3rd time on dialysis, 2nd time during the course of our relationship, and he got a call for a transplant. He got a call in the middle of the night. Our baby was 5 months old. Our youngest baby was 5 months old, and our daughter was going through confirmation, and I can't really describe that season other than it was completely life-changing. My eyes were completely opened. I should back up a little bit. I did start Bible study by that point. I was a part of a group prior to having our 3rd born. And then by the time our 3rd born was born, I was running a very small group on Thursday mornings that had been started by a friend in church, and then she moved, and I was left to kind of keep the group going. And I was completely just receptive of the fact that I didn't feel like I was equipped to do it, but at the same time I was, pouring into trying to figure it out, and I was open to people in my life to teach me the right way. And I think that God just really provided what I needed to put me in the right communities, but at the same time I was going through a major change. It was a time where I was really tested, but my faith came through stronger. And on top of that, I was able to, that's when God really busted through my anxiety that I had been struggling with for so many years. There were just so many things that were out of my control at that point that I really just had no choice but to surrender what I couldn't control. And even though that was ugly from the outside, God was really doing a beautiful thing on the inside in my heart. And he didn't stop there, though. I mean, yes, my heart was changed, and yes, I was learning how to live without anxiety on things that normally would cause really bad anxiety. And I settled in and just kind of went about life, and still though was taking the reins in my marriage and parenting. I think subconsciously I felt like because I wanted to be a mom my whole life, I really took it seriously, and I just poured into researching development, and I had already had quite a bit of knowledge on how to manage children. And my husband, again, was such a hard worker that he wasn't around much, and I just felt like it was a necessity to have the reins. But it was hurting us in the long run, and I, again, didn't realize that until years later when our middle, who was about, well, he was in 8th grade at this time, so a couple more years had passed, and then our middle son was in 8th grade, and we just walked into a time that threw me completely off guard. And I looked at that time as humbling, like God was refining me through humbling me. And it was then that I realized that that I was taking the reins, and that is not how God designs marriage to be. And I remember saying 2 things during that tumultuous time. I told my husband, I need you. I had been controlling everything and managing everything on my own, and I was doing fine, but it got to a point where it was just too much. And I really was convicted at that point that I was doing marriage all wrong. And mind you, this was 16, 17 years into our marriage. I was finally convicted of the fact that I was doing it wrong. And I genuinely wanted a change right there. I wanted to completely stop what I was doing and do it the right way. And it doesn't work that way, because you really have to learn. When you're doing something wrong for so long, you have no idea how to make it right. And it's really not up to you to figure it out. I do remember I started getting up at 5:30 in the morning and just taking that time to just be with my Bible and be with God. And I've learned a lot. Like, this was the age of wisdom for me, where I finally was open to learning the right way how to do things. And I can tell you, I have spent my entire life doing things the wrong way. I jokingly say it's because I'm left-handed, but truly, my childhood, I did everything the way I wanted to do it. Whether somebody was trying to guide me in the right way or not, I wasn't receptive to hearing it, and I would just do things what they call the Carrie way. That's my name, by the way. I don't think I've ever shared. I was always doing things the Carrie way, and I would do it with a smile on my face, but whether it was right or wrong, I was still doing it my way. And to be this far into my adult life and this far into family life, we had 3 kids by that point. We were married 16, 17 years, and I was claiming that I had done it all wrong, and will you forgive me? And that was my repentance moment. And I remember furthermore, over the summer, which was about a year ago, it dawned on me that I had never even said the prayer of repentance, where I really, truly, actually let God into my heart. I had opened doors for him, and he was filling me and teaching me, but I had never actually repented of the things that I had done and asked God's forgiveness and asked him to come into my heart. I had never done that until about a little over a year ago. And now I'm there. I truly believe that I'm saved. I truly believe that he has made me a new creation, and that the old is gone and the new has come. I truly believe it with all my heart. And my heart aches for the people in my life who haven't done that yet. But I also can look at it and say, look how long it took me. And that just builds a level of patience in your heart and a yearning to pray for salvation for those that I love, because I want to be in eternity with these people that I love. And I truly love everybody in my life. even the people that have cut me out of theirs, I love them and I want them in eternity with God. I can't imagine any other way that would be better. And I yearn for that for anyone who's listening. We could all be a family. You know what I mean? We could all be brothers and sisters in Christ. The Bible teaches everything you need to know. And it can be overwhelming, but it can also be a beautiful gift that God gives to each one of us individually. He meets us where we are, and then He provides the steps to get out of the fire. And if you trust Him, and if you surrender and you let your pride go, because you can't figure it out on your own, no matter how hard you try, and believe me, I tried. And I was so ignorant on top of it, because not only was I trying to control everything, but I had no idea that I was doing it or what it was doing to the people in my life that I love. And I do now, and I know better now. And I also know that love is such a unique gift, but there are so many who are not utilizing it properly. You don't know how to love, and you don't know how to be loved, so you're just in this little cycle of destructive habits over and over and over again until you finally wake up. And I believe it can happen for anybody, because like I said, it happened for me, and I've been a slow study, and I just look at how patient God has been and how He's provided on just countless levels. And He has taken what He knows about me and shaped me in a way that I can respond to, and He can do it for you too. And so this has turned into a really long testimony, which is why I never actually say it, because it's so long. But it doesn't have to be that complicated. It's just learn from me, who says, open your eyes. Open your eyes to what's going on. God is real. He changes hearts. That's what He does. And He wants your heart, okay? And it could be messy, and that's okay, because you won't be alone. He'll provide everything you need. And so you take that leap of faith, and you let it happen. And the time is now, so let it happen. Have a great day.